should be listening to the CISO Series podcast. Go.
Everyone should be listening to this podcast in the series because that is how you grow in your network.
It's time to begin the CISO Series podcast.
Welcome to the CISO Series podcast. My name is David Spark. I am the producer of the CISO Series. And joining me since day one, it's Mike Johnson, CISO over at Rivian. Mike, say hello to the audience.
Hello, audience. Great to be with you again.
That's what his voice sounds like. You don't plan on changing it, adopting a new voice, creating a new accent, developing a lisp, anything like that, Mike, throughout the show?
I actually had a lisp when I was a kid.
I did too. I had did it just go away by itself?
No, I actually did speech therapy and all that fun stuff. So I worked on it.
Mine was not that severe, but it did just kind of go away. I had it through my first couple of years of college too.
Mine I got through in elementary school and maybe some middle school.
Oh, but it wasn't. It would come out every now and then. No, it wasn't like a chronic list, but it would come out every now and then. We're available at CISOseries.com. If you have not gone there, we recommend people spend at least 2 hours a day at CISOseries.com.
Minimum.
I think that's what it's a doctor's recommended time.
Yes.
Just go to the site, read, listen to a bunch of episodes. 2 hours, you should feel a lot healthier, I believe.
Yeah, yes. You will feel healthier. You will feel better informed, which makes you feel healthier.
Our sponsor for today's episode, a spectacular sponsor of the CISO series. They actually have a suite of solutions that will help you on your zero trust journey. None other than ThreatLocker. We'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show. But first, Mike, I want to talk to you about the importance of in-person cyber communities. Now, I'm just going to sort of pat myself on the back right now. For those listeners who are in the San Diego, SoCal area, I started the San Diego Cyber Group meetup actually with someone else, but now I'm just running it by myself now. And it's become quite successful. And really, honestly, people just love to get together with other cybersecurity professionals. And it's great just to network. But what would be your tip to make the most of your local group, Mike?
What I would say is you have to go more than once.
Yes.
The first time that you go, I'm an introvert, so my first time to any of these events, it's going to be very quiet. I'm not going to get a whole lot out of it. But by going to the same event over and over again, you see the same faces, you open up, you have better conversations. So that's my one tip is commit. Ultimately, that's what comes out of it. Commit.
And I will say, do not hesitate to walk up to complete strangers and just say hello. And this is, by the way, this is my favorite opening line. If you walk into a group of 3-4 people chatting and you think you're going to be interrupting them, first, let me point out, yes, that is what you're doing. You're interrupting them.
by definition.
But this is how you can make it ease in. And this is what I do. I literally walk in and I point out the obvious. I say, what am I interrupting? And because you are. But what you're doing is you're asking, what is the conversation about? Because one of the problems I see a lot of people do is walk in and they start their own conversation. Like, well, something was already going on here. So it ingratiates you to the group by saying, all right, I want to know what you're talking about and I want to be a part of that conversation, whatever it is.
I think that's a great tip because you want to be a part of the conversation. You're not showing up to start a new one.
Correct. Now, you could have a topic, a concern of yourself that you could eventually bring up, but just be where they're at when it starts.
One of the pieces of advice that we always give on the show is meet people where they are.
Yes.
And that's a great example.
Your users as well.
Yes.
Don't force their hand where they don't want to be. Our guest has been nodding all the way through this, and our guest has been on the show multiple times. In previous incarnations, he now has a new gig. He's now the CISO over at Atlassian. And as we understand, it's the smallest, it's like a startup, tiny little company. It is the smallest company, he said, he's ever worked for. Please, the CISO of Atlassian, David Cross. David, thank you so much for joining us again.
David, thanks for allowing me to come back. And I can't wait to get the 5-time jacket. I'm just dying for it. So
you do have a jacket. By the way, we're working on other swag too, I must say. We're working on others.
unexpected outcomes or failures.
CISOs are drowning in hundreds of vendor messages monthly, mostly lacking any personalization or credible context. As Val Sanev of ExecWeb put it on LinkedIn, quote, "The cybersecurity sales model is broken. Startups waste months chasing ghosted threads, LinkedIn likes, and email cadences when what they need is simple, warm, qualified meetings with real decision makers." So instead of trying to optimize cold outreach, what if sales teams spent their time securing warm introductions to just 10 qualified prospects? By the way, I always say this, just make connections. Do we need to challenge the entire hustle mentality? Maybe the path forward isn't more volume, but better access. I am a huge fan of quality over quantity, Mike.
We started this podcast 7 years ago, and it was the CISO. What was it?
Can you remember the original title of it?
It's always a mouthful, which is why we changed the name. But
yeah, that's why we changed it. Yes.
The CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast.
Even I called it by its right name, and I'm the one who named it.
But what we were highlighting at that point was that the relationship was broken.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was an adversarial relationship.
In fact, and you, by the way, legitimized my doing this.
Yes.
Because I saw your post about how frustrated you were. I mean, every time you posted about this on LinkedIn, you expressed your frustration. And by the way, the crowd came running in.
Yes. And I think 7 years later, I think we're at least past that. I think we've at least fixed, we won't take credit for it, but we've had a small...
Mike, this is where you and I differ. I'm totally taking credit for this.
So David fixed this relationship.
No, with your help, Mike.
So it's at least not adversarial anymore. But it totally is true that the sales model of always going to the top, that's still happening, and that is still fundamentally not working. I don't think this is unique to cybersecurity, by the way. CIOs have the same thing. They're being constantly approached. And for my team, I'm looking for feedback from my leaders, from my really high-level individual contributors. And that's what some of the feedback to this thread was don't talk to the CISOs. Talk to the leaders within the security org. Talk to the principal engineers. Those are the folks who are making the recommendations. And that's one of the methods. But the piece of advice that I keep giving on this show, and I will continue to give until I'm blue in the face, is the best source of sales leads is your own customers. Make your own customers happy. When the peers of those customers are looking to solve a similar problem, they're going to go ask their networks. They're going to go say, hey, how have you solved this? That conversation in that in-person security meetup might be about, hey, how have you solved this?
And you don't even need to say, hey, could you recommend us to your friends? Just be overly nice, and they will go out of their way to speak for you.
Absolutely. Be overly nice and deliver a good product.
David Cross, you feel the same way?
I think some great tips there, a lot of things. And certainly we don't want to go down and you got to be in the Gartner Magic Quadrant and those type of things. But I think the key word is right at the beginning there is about personalization, right? And I say you need to understand the customer, because sometimes the CISO could be the right person, or it could be the architect that owns that area, right? You need to go deep and understand the customer and who's the decision maker, who works in that particular area, and understanding their environment. It's saying coming to me and saying, hey, I want to protect your Office 365. We don't even use Office 365. So why would you waste your time? And I think the other element is you want it to be a safe place, right? People that, if you're interested, and this is where I think Sage Taps and others are doing, is so that you can say, I might be interested, but I want to be safe. I don't want to get bombarded with phone calls and things after the thing, just because I wanted a little bit of information, right? And that's another part of it. If you don't feel safe, you're always going to be hesitant to engage.
By the way, I'm going to toot our horn again. This is why we started our show, Security You Should Know, where two CISOs interview a vendor about their product. What we've heard from the listeners, they say it is a safe way to learn about new solutions. And we've heard it again and again and again. Vendors don't click on that book a demo button because they do not want to get trapped.
Exactly.
When is the best time to do this?
Quote, levity in the heat of the moment isn't just about making people laugh. It's leadership under control. And that was from Jarek Beeson, CISO of WM, who recently made the case on LinkedIn that levity is an underdeveloped soft skill for the CISO arsenal. During a high-stakes incident, laughter doesn't solve your technical problem, but it can reboot your team. When a CISO can inject strategic humor during a crisis, they're demonstrating emotional command that builds trust, lowers defenses, and transforms intensity into momentum. So how do you, I'm going to start with you, David Cross, how do you develop that kind of composure? Like, when the S is hitting the fan. Is this teachable, or does this only come from surviving enough high pressure situations that you learn to breathe through them? And maybe you can think about your first one and the one you deal with now. Are you a different person, David Cross?
Well, here's where I'm going to make my pitch for an element for many companies. This is where veterans can really be a great value add, to your organization.
Yes.
And because part of it is because it's the training. And at first I'll start off with that. A big part of it is you learn to train how you're going to fight, right? And this is where playbooks and tabletops and other things. And ultimately, the veterans can know, they know how to operate in the playbook. They know how to operate under fire. They know how to have the discipline, right? And you can train this. This is what we do. And you can bring it from others. But you can do it in the civilian world in the same way. But use the veterans and their experience. And those principles can really help everyone get through the challenging times. Also, I think there's another element that I want to call out is, as a leader, is you're a part of the team, you're part of the org, and you lead by example, right? It's that you understand everything that you're doing and you've been part of it. And so that when you're under fire, you're part of that. You're not misunderstanding it. You're not trying to dismiss things. And I think it's very, very important to do as well.
Mike, I throw this to you. You were not ex-military, but David was. So can you think about your first high pressure experience and your latest? Like, I'll ask, were you a very different person from one to the most recent?
Well, I think I was. I can't remember when my first, it was a very long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something that as you go through these over and over again, you do learn both the ability to and the importance of being calm. If you are out there with your hair on fire, everybody else is going to be running around with their hair on fire too. You need to actually, as David was saying, lead by example and be calm, remain calm. You might be the duck, like you might be smooth above water and your feet are paddling like crazy underneath.
By the way, I love that metaphor. Go on.
I mean, that's kind of the CISO metaphor, really. But you do need to intentionally be calm. And in my early days, I had to stop and pause and recognize that. And I've had the good fortune of working with many very excellent incident responders. And that's where you really see it. People who their profession is responding when the S hits the fan. You can see how they remain calm for whatever might be coming their way. David mentioned hiring veterans. One of the most impressive incident responders I ever worked with, they were a first responder. They were an EMT who would ride along in ambulances and was responding to terrible events. And you can see how they remain calm. So yes, I'm very different than I was when I first got started. Some of that comes through practice. A lot of that comes through training and learning and observing others who are really good at it.
So the advice for someone, I'll start to you, David Cross, if you don't have military experience and you haven't done the training exercises, I guess start doing the training exercises. Yes?
Absolutely. This is where I think the real tabletop exercises, right? Again, train like you're going to fight. And not the very simple ones you check the box. Make it a real high pressure training, a tabletop, and you will be ready when the time comes. Yeah.
And have you done that with past teams before yourself, David?
Absolutely. It's one of the best things you could do. It's a great investment.
And I hear this and just quick answer, what is the number one thing you learn from doing these tabletop exercises?
The number one thing is you always learn that where the gap is on who owns something and who's the decision maker. And that is the worst place to be when you're under fire and you don't know who can make the approval or make the decision. That's the worst place to ever be.
Before we go on any further, I do want to tell you about our spectacular sponsor, and that would be ThreatLocker. Now, as we all know, in cybersecurity, seconds matter, precision matters. That's why ThreatLocker is upping the game again. The company just launched a new set of solutions built for teams who need to move fast without compromising security. So it's zero trust, but without complexity. Sounds good. All right. I'm going to walk through some of these solutions. First, with ThreatLocker Insights, you get real-time intelligence from millions of endpoints worldwide to empower you to make the best, swift cybersecurity decisions on what applications to allow and what controls to put in place in your environment. Patch management? Well, instead of chasing updates and manually approving patches at 2 a.m., ThreatLocker takes care of it for you with the rigorous research and testing you need to stay compliant and secure. Cloud Control adds an essential layer of defense, further closing the gaps that phishing and token theft campaigns love to exploit. They're also making life easier for IT and security teams with the new User Store, a smart way to give users instant access to pre-approved software while maintaining the strong security of your environment. And for web threats, well, one of their newest is Web Control. It lets you block sites you don't trust or users should not access from the workplace. And it blocks unapproved content by category, not necessarily URL by URL. Now, of course, you still get ThreatLocker's 24/7 US-based cyber hero support. No scripts, no waiting hours for answers. They deliver world-class, swift support, responding in about 60 seconds. Now, it's no accident that listen to this, 50,000 companies now trust ThreatLocker to help them harden their environments against modern threats. If you're serious about tightening your defenses and getting a platform that doesn't slow you down, check out threatlocker.com to learn more.
It's time to play What's Worse?
David Cross has played this many times. Mike Johnson has played this as well many times. And the person who is submitting has submitted many times.
Here
we go.
We're
all veterans all the way around.
Yes, we're all experienced.
Could this be any worse?
All right. This is a new twist, and I love this. Very, very creative. And actually, you know what? This very much is telling to our last segment.
All right.
So it's from Dustin Sachs of Cyber Risk Collective. And Mike, which one's worse? A security strategy driven by fear or a security strategy driven by overconfidence?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting comment. So it's essentially, are you using FUD or are you clueless, basically?
Well, not clueless, just like you think you've got it all right, and you probably do not.
That feels clueless to me. You're at least lack of self-awareness.
Lack of self. That's a
Yes.
good way of putting it.
Boy,
These are two levels of stupidity.
stupid's a strong word, but these are both incorrect ways to lead a strategy for sure. So,
Right. And by the way, you've probably seen them done before.
I think all of these have been unfortunate ways that people have led security programs before. I really think the lack of self-awareness is the worst. Like, theoretically, if you're leading a program through fear,
At least your heart's in the right place.
well, you're at least aware that you're doing that. Like, you're doing that with intention.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a great intention, but at least you're aware that that is your intention.
Right.
But if you are...
And you could be, by the way, if you're leading by fear, you can be very easily swayed. I mean, you're not worried about this yet?
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, it can absolutely be the squirrel mentality.
Yeah, you could be chasing squirrels all day.
Yes, absolutely. So, again, Dustin, both really bad options.
This is good.
So
This is good.
Good scenario. But
So you're going overconfidence.
I do think the overconfidence, because it's that lack of self-awareness that really bugs me on that one.
All right. David Cross, do you agree or disagree? Because this is a tough one, I think.
No, actually, it's not a tough one. And
No?
I'm good at since we got the veterans theme going on here, is so the military experience, the biggest failure is when you are overconfident. You know what to do, you know what you're doing, and that is when bad things happen. You go on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier and you think, I know this, I got it down. That is when someone gets blown off the flight deck, right? So that's what it's all about. You're always training, you're always aware, and that's what success is all about.
So, as we have said, a good level of paranoia is healthy.
Well, Andy Grove said, only the paranoid survive.
All right. So both of you are saying that overconfidence. And now, but you don't. You're just saying that when you get to the point of overconfidence, you're going to miss something that's critical. But I would argue you're going to miss something critical if you're driven by fear at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah, there is, because I think then you're not taking a step back, or the fear is that you're into fight or flight, correct? Mm-hmm. Right. And really, those are not the only two options. There's sometimes more than that. And I think that's very important to call out as well.
Is this really the right strategy?
What will our cybersecurity incidents cost us next year? End quote. Who knows? Maybe like earnings guidance from public companies, think in ranges X million to Y million, suggested Rob Labbe, CISO in residence over at Mining and Metals, ISAC. It's like a weather forecast. Precision in prediction is often precisely wrong, while accurate ranges build credibility and help with decision-making. Instead of obsessing over exact numbers, focus on intelligent uncertainty. I like that. The suggested framework breaks cybersecurity costs into 4 components: security spend, incident costs, security friction, and opportunity costs. Now, David Cross isn't trying to predict the unpredictable a losing battle.
Well, I think it's a really interesting conversation. One of the things is that you got to think about risk management here, and you need to develop a set of ranges, right? Based on the various outcomes. Because let's think about it as just like vulnerability severity, right? You have low, medium, high, critical, right? And you can kind of do some predictions on saying, what would it be for a critical or for a high? And I think that can help you do some planning, right? And estimation, right? And also how you're going to approach it, right? And so I know this is maybe scare people, but sometimes this is where cyber insurance and the actuarial kind of plans and how they structure it really can come into play in helping you in actually doing that, because they have a lot of experience based on your company, your vertical, and other things, in saying that what could you possibly predict, what would be the range of those, and then what protections do your insurance you may want to have. So I know it sounds different that you'd rarely hear about, but I think there's a lot of structure that many companies can help in building out that plan.
I like the low, medium, high thing. How have you addressed this, Mike? When people want an exact number, but you have to give ranges and that makes them even more uncomfortable? Or is there a way you make them more comfortable with the uncertainty?
Right now, for better or for worse, our industry is recognized as relatively immature in that area. So that ability to actually give predictions for the number of incidents or the costs of the incidents, I haven't been asked to provide that. So that's something that I still think we have some time to resolve. David mentions insurance and actuarial tables. Those industries have built up that muscle over time to where it is something that they can rely on, and they can use that and they can predict for these sets of facts, here is the likely outcomes that we will see. And based on history, these are the expected costs of these outcomes, which also we don't have a good history of the costs of incidents. The cost of an incident 5 years ago is very different than the cost of an incident today. That is one of the areas that ransomware has helped, in that there are costs associated with ransomware incidents, and we've seen what those are, but even those have been changing.
Yeah, pretty drastically.
The cost of a ransomware incident 5 years ago is very different than the cost of one today.
That's why I got to assume like cyber insurance actuarial tables got to be like an EKG chart going all over the map.
They certainly feel that way. I've spoken with some folks in the industry in the past, and they are saying, hey, we're getting better data. We're learning more over time. But if you look at renewal rates, which is really the time that I interface with them, they're very different year over year. And what the insurance companies are seeing as good practices that help manage those costs, that seems to be changing as well year over year. So I hope this is an area that we can get better at over time, but we're not there yet.
Maybe if I could interject something as well, is you think about with the cyber insurance and others, is it's just like sports teams, right? You know, say the NFL, say that, hey, what do they have for the players on the team and their experience and different things? That's just like saying, what is their vulnerability management looking like? What's their patching cycles look like? There's a set of these statistics can really kind of help on what would be potential impact or the likelihood and other things in helping you building those ranges with some kind of reliability.
So give me a good example of a range you often have to deal with. And is it dollars to if we don't do task X or we don't spend the money on this? Like, give me an idea of a common case of this. David Cross?
Yeah, I think for many companies, it's that you have an incident, right? So there's a variable brand and things, but if you have an incident, and often the biggest unknown cost or a range of costs that you can estimate is, outside counsel, it'd be an example, right? Is that what do you need to have to deal with that? Because you don't need that counsel or lawyers full time, but if there's an incident, you may need them for a lot of work. And how do you prepare for it and how you measure that? And I think it's a good example.
I think if you look at risk management, at the highest level, it is likelihood versus impact. And where that's not satisfactory to all of the quantification fans out there, but from a qualitative perspective, that's where many of our programs are today. This is the likelihood of this thing happening, and this is how painful it would be if it did happen. And it's really just usually 5 points on each of two axes, and you do some math and you say this is a high, medium, or low, or critical, or a very low, or whatever your range is coming out of it. That is what we do every day, is risk management. And it's how bad can it be and what's the likelihood of that happening?
Right. And I would assume, because I look at this as well, is you kind of start at like, what is the thing that could literally cripple us? What could put an end to the business? Start there and like work your way down. Yes?
For sure. It's like you do want to start with the things that are most likely to be extremely detrimental to the business. Now, you want to make sure you're not chasing the black swans because it's very difficult to identify what those might be. But for many companies, ransomware is not quite existential, but is most likely the thing that will cause the most impact. Certainly, frequency is also a thing there. So I think most organizations, it's like, understand your exposure to ransomware and go after that. And that's a good place for any program to start.
David, you want to close?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great example, is that if it occurred, right, and then what would it take and likely take, from a cost and all the elements of it. And I think that's a great example to start from.
As a CISO, what do you think about this?
Are security startups the worst at doing security for themselves? And this is a question that was asked by a security professional who manages security reviews for 5 to 10 mergers and acquisitions a year for his enterprise company. While they may be selling a great product, their ability to secure their own infrastructure is laughable. This is what this person on Reddit thought and posted this conundrum. It's a conundrum for the M&A. The acquired company thinks their security is enterprise ready because they've been working for an enterprise business. Now, once they're merging with a company that has actual standards, the attraction and the sales price starts to drop. Is this something that a last-minute fix can solve, Mike Johnson, or has the startup put themselves in a situation where they've shot themselves in their own foot?
So I first want to start with the shocking revelation that security is hard. And startups are not in a great position to solve security. They're really just trying to survive.
Right.
They're trying to get something off the ground. They're trying to build a product, build a go-to-market strategy, all of that. It's not surprising that security is not the first thing that they're investing their time and resources into it. That said, security startups are slightly different. You are expecting, as a customer of one of these, that your security vendor has invested in security. And so it's a bit of a quandary if those aren't investing in security. But last minute, you can't fix this last minute.
No.
If you're trying to fix it when you sign the letter of intent or even entered into an earlier stages of due diligence, it's going to be found out. The company who's acquiring you is going to get to the bottom of that. But it's fine. Like the best thing that you can do is just be open and honest about it. Like, this is where we are.
And I mean, and they'll probably say, okay, to get you up to our level, it's going to cost X, and that's going to impact whatever the purchase price is. David Cross?
I can't resist by saying, like we did earlier, is that you have to lead by example, especially the security startups. Now, let's kind of break it apart a little bit here. It certainly is when you're very young and early, you need to be agile and fast, right? But it's kind of like a stage crawl, walk, run, right? In the very early stages, you're building something. Yes, do you need to have everything? No. But you want to start winning the enterprise customers, you better be enterprise grade security yourself, right? So overall, I can, it kind of made me think about when I saw this question coming in, it's really about building that stage plan, right? And there was a really good book out there by Matt Bloomberg, right? Called The Startup CXO here, okay? And really in this is that thinking about building a startup is the person is the chief revenue officer of day one of 5 people is maybe quite different than who you need to be the chief revenue officer when there's 300 people. And the reality is that maybe the same thing for the CISO. You're a CISO of a 5-person team or a CISO of a 100-person team. Your skills, your experience, and your needs may be very different, and a company needs to have a plan, crawl, walk, run, for security, revenue, sales, everything. And I think that's an important element that many companies need to think about.
What I'm hearing is you can get there. It's not going to go as fast as you think it's going to go or hope it will go.
It's about the stages. What stage do you want to be in? If you want to start selling to enterprise customers, you got to be in a different stage and what it takes to get to that stage.
Awesome. Thank you very much, David Cross. Thank you very much, Mike Johnson. And thank you to ThreatLocker, our sponsor for today's show. If you don't know their website, it's threatlocker.com. It is spelled exactly the way it sounds. And if you go check them out, and if you do want to learn more from them, why not tell them that the CISO series sent you there? They want to know that the money they have spent sponsoring us is actually having an impact. Let them know. David Cross, thank you so much. Now the CISO for this tiny company, Atlassian. Are you hiring over there?
Yes, we are. We're a global company, and what we say is we are team anywhere, which means we are remote.
So you will hire people wherever. Now, do you work remotely or do you go to the office yourself?
I go into the office 1 to 2 days a week by choice, because when you have a great vibe of a company, a lot of people like to go into the office, but completely by choice.
Well, thank you very much, David Cross. Thank you very much, Mike Johnson. Thank you to our audience as well. We greatly, as I've said it many times before, and I truly mean it, we greatly appreciate your contributions. If you haven't contributed, like a what's worse scenario, I'm always looking for good ones. If you haven't contributed, why not do that? Why not send us a question you would like to ask, or you see a great discussion online, or a what's worse scenario? Send it in. This show thrives on your submissions. So I mean it when I say I greatly appreciate your contributions and for listening to the CISO Series podcast.
That wraps up another episode. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do. We have lots more shows on our website, CISOseries.com. Please join us on Fridays for our live shows, Super Cyber Friday, our virtual meetup, and Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review. This show thrives on your input. Go to the Participate menu on our site for plenty of ways to get involved, including recording a question or a comment for the show. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, contact David Spark directly at david@cisoseries.com. Thank you for listening to the CISO Series podcast.